Hi, Martha. Okay, well, I am Louise, and I'll be the facilitator today. I've been a member of Erace for over 2 decades. I used to be in New Orleans. Now I'm in Austin, Texas. So, Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. The land acknowledgement. Although by the looks of who's here, it's going to be less of the tribes that I will mention. We begin today by acknowledging that we know what we know, as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonko and Lipan Apache and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, the Cahuilla and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank yet their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite the centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are still on indigenous land, and it will always be indigenous land. Okay, most of you are veterans, but I'll go through the format, which is obviously to keep yourselves on mute unless you're talking. If you want to get on the list, you raise one finger, wave it around so I can see. You will get 2 minutes to speak. And if you're listening and you have something to say, you have a question, raise 2 fingers and wave it around, and you can have a clarifying question. And that's after the speaker has finished. And your clarifying question is, for example, I didn't understand what you meant by, or can you clarify what you meant by? It's not to further your opinion on something, it's just to clarify something that the speaker had said. Please respect the speaker, do not interrupt, no side comments to others. Okay, we shall introduce ourselves, and we will start with Phyllis.
Good morning. I am Phyllis. I'm in New Orleans. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I wish we had all thought to copy the amazing outfit worn by the speaker in the TED Talk, because I was here for it.
Cindy, sorry, I forgot I was the facilitator. Cindy.
She's stepped away.
Oh, of course, I can see that. Teresa.
I am Teresa in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've been coming since last August. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Stanton.
Good morning, Stanton and Austin. I've been coming for a little over a year now. Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Bill.
Bill Ives, and I've been coming for about 6 years, and I learn something new every time. Looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Marva.
Good morning. My name is Marva, and I've been attending post-Katrina. I look forward to a lively discussion.
Thank you. Marion.
Oh, there I am. Okay. Well, the devil is in the computer again this morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm Marion Lagarde, here in looking forward to the discussion. And I have to go along with Phyllis. I like that guy's blouse. Wish I could get
I'm sorry, Marion, where are you from?
New Orleans.
Okay. It sounds like your sound cut out. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble this morning. You all can hear me okay, though?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, Amal, we're just introducing ourselves. Amal.
Good morning. I'm Amal. Always look forward to the conversation. So that's it.
All right, thank you. And Cindy, lastly. Muted. Muted.
I'm Cindy Morse. Been coming about 5 or 6 years. Someday I'm gonna go look it up. Live in New Orleans. Looking forward to it,
Thank you.
as always. Thanks.
So I'm really hoping everyone did get a chance to watch the video. If for some reason you didn't, it mentioned some very interesting history that I didn't know, and I thought I was a big fan of drag shows and drag queens. So the emancipation parades that started, Black women would be dressed up, flowers, flowery dresses, and they'd be called the queens of the parade. Gay men adopted this, and they would dress up, and then and this is the 1800s, the late 1800s, they would have balls called the Grand Drag, which changed to drag, so they became drag queens. And I just think that is very interesting to me. This is not a new phenomenon at all. So knowing this history, I feel the Tennessee ban that's just happened on drag shows is just absurd, abhorrent, ridiculous, frightening. It's clear that we need to make a stand against this kind of oppression, and it is oppression. And I know for those of you who think Erace Our Meetings is just about race, well, it hugely part is, but it's also about oppression of any kind of peoples. And this topic is very much about race, because as he says, he's a professor, by the way, at Princeton, and he said that the history of the gay African American has been lost because it's all about genealogy, man, wife, child, whatever. So these people's history has been lost. It doesn't mean it didn't exist. So I think that's a very huge part of what we can talk about today. And so I think in order for us all to be productive and effective anti-racists, we need to understand and accept every type of racism and bigotry. I think that's our duty. We can't just handpick what we want to stand against. I think we have to stand against it all. That's my opinion. And I am going to start to take names to get on the list of who wants to speak. Okay, we've got Stanton. Anyone else? We've got Marion. Anyone else right now? No. Okay, so, sorry, Phyllis. And Stanton, take it away, brother.
Yeah, I want to start this off by first saying we've talked about this before, not to conflate transgender and transvestite or cross-dressing, two separate categories. And I think we're all pretty clear about that. But I wanted to do the RuPaul quote, which is, "We're all born naked and the rest is drag." And I think that's true. I mean, that's really what life is. Everybody has their costumes and their looks. It's back to I've heard the words about things not being quote unquote natural. Well, I didn't know that women wearing makeup is natural. I didn't know that plastic surgery was natural. I didn't know that, fashion is necessarily natural, but yeah, we all understand this is a part of the human expression, and we all want to be able to fully express ourselves no matter what that expression is. I personally do not have any understanding of the transgender personally. I don't relate. I don't get it. I don't have any personal connection to drag queens. I don't get it personally, and I'm a gay man. Doesn't mean I have to understand what those people want to do or what they want to accomplish. But I do have a solution. I was in Costco the other day and I saw an Islamic family and the woman was covered in head to toe. And my initial reaction was that of revulsion. What the hell? And you're in America. And I had all those, anti-woman feelings of what are they doing and why are they accepting this? And then I thought, shut the hell up. In my own mind, I'm saying shut up and stop thinking this way. It's their business. I have no authority to tell them how they should dress and what practices they should adhere to. So I think what needs to happen for the transgender community is they need to form a religion. And if they formed a religion, then they'd have religious protections like all these other people whose philosophies and appearance I don't agree to or adhere to. Or when I see Orthodox Jews, when I lived in Los Angeles, who looked like it was 1750, dressed in the summer with the fur hats and looking ridiculous to me. Or when I see the Pope and bishops looking ridiculous. So I think we get the drift. I will shut up.
Thank you. Marion.
Okay, this article brought back memories of the 60s. I finished undergraduate school in 1964, even though I was actually in the class of 63. I got sick and I had to stay out a semester. I was a frail something. I'm not frail anymore though. But anyway, this brought back memories of one of Martin Luther King's chief organizers, Bayard Rustin. I didn't know until really late on in my life that Bayard Rustin was gay. And he was very instrumental in the civil rights movement. So I was very pleased to hear this guy talk about him. It was a shame they put him in the background, even though I remember reading about him in Ebony magazine or Jet magazine. Marva knows about that. I guess you all do now too. And I remember seeing his picture. So after I read the article, heard this guy's comments, I looked back on the internet and I found some more information that I had forgotten about Bayard Rustin. But he was a gay man, and Dr. King's people tried to keep it quiet as possible, but the man was so instrumental in having a hand in really bringing about the Civil Rights March on Washington. And I just thought it was a shame that they tried to keep this hidden, but as we all know, things have a way of coming to the surface. So I'm glad you picked this article, Louise, because it really brought back some good memories, some bad ones too, but really good memories, especially about Bayard Rustin. He really was a great guy.
Thank you, Marion. Phyllis. And I just want to say, after Phyllis, there's it's open. So does anyone else want to be on the list? No. Go ahead, Phyllis.
So while watching the video, as I said earlier, I love the look, his jewelry, makeup, shirt, skirt, shoes. I love the sensible shoes. If I was going to wear an outfit like that, those are the shoes I would wear. I also love, I don't know if anybody caught this, that he's from Louisiana. He grew up in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And he was bullied as a child for being effeminate. And I was surprised because when I was watching him, I did not sort of get an effeminate vibe. I thought he gave off a very masculine vibe. I mean, maybe it's my bias about deep voices, I don't know, but I thought he was a very compelling speaker. He made his points very well. Of course, he's a professor, so he knows how to talk to groups of people. And I feel like the laws that they're trying to pass against drag queens, and that will also target transgender people and gay people, and then, you know, they're just going to work their way down the list. They're starting with the low-hanging fruit, because it's always easiest to get the low-hanging fruit and get other people on board to persecute them. But when somebody speaks out at a national convention and uses the term eradicate, all the red flags need to start flying, and we need to start fighting directly at people. Send letters, make phone calls, even if they're not your representatives or senators. I mean, I think we all got to like flood these people with the fruits of their own ignorance, because they're just dangerous. All these people are dangerous. And if I have time, in my dabblings, in the internet, I found this picture. Can anybody see it?
Yes.
That is Brigham Morris Young, one of the sons of Brigham Young. He performed in shows in Utah as there was a name to his character, Madame Petrini. So I just thought that was something really interesting, given what we think of, you know, the LDS Church, that there are things that everybody had in the past that isn't terrible.
Thank you, Phyllis. So I just want to add on to that, oh, good, Bill. Okay. I was just going to say, though, that I want you to think, and if you have a comment, that, I mean, we're heading towards Nazi Germany here, right? With the banning of something as innocuous as a drag show. I mean, it's nothing harmful about it at all, or dangerous, or whatever they say. So I just want you to, you know, chime in on your thoughts on that. And so I've got Bill next, and then I see Gigi, and I see Stanton. And so Bill, please. Oh, wait, Phyllis and Cindy. Any more takers? No. Okay, Bill, take it away.
I enjoy drag shows. I like them because their sense of humor and artistry in their caricature. But the question I had, I don't know the answer to it, but when I was younger, the moderator, the speaker, used the term queer. When I was younger, that was a derogatory term. It was used like the N-word towards Blacks. And now it's more commonly accepted. I don't know what the transformation is, but it puzzles me. Anyway, I completely endorse what the speaker said, and I learned a lot. I know there's a lot of gay Black singers who have been, Bobby Short was one, and who have been made significant contributions to show tunes and R&B. Anyway, that's enough for now.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Gigi.
Stanton has a clarifying question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stanton.
Yes, Sam.
It's actually a clarifying statement for you. So taking back the word of oppression to use it in your own group is what now queer people do. It's like Black people taking back the N-word for themselves. It's basically, I can say it, maybe you can't kind of situation, but it's taking back the word of oppression and using it
Right.
the word of liberation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stan. I hesitate to use the word because I still associate it as a word of oppression.
Okay, so thank you, Bill. Thank you, Stanton, for clarifying that. And Gigi, you're next.
I knew about Bayard Rustin being gay. I had read a book or something about him. And also we had James Baldwin, which I've read many of his books. Both of these people were civil rights activists. Bayard Rustin, again, was definitely instrumental in the March on Washington. But if you think about the civil rights movement, Claudette Colvin was the first person to say, hey, I'm not giving up my seat to a white person. So the civil rights movement had to be strategic in what it did and who they put as the forefront for things to be accepted. And even with Baldwin and Bayard Rustin being gay, at the end of the day, they saw the bigger picture. It was about the rights of Black people and their rights as Black people, not particularly as gay people. My issue is we've always been the lowest hanging fruit in this country, and we still are. It's just so happened that, not to say that they aren't focusing on us or things have gotten better or things aren't happening. At the forefront, the media is putting gay, transgender, LGBTQIA up front. But again, as I keep saying, if African Americans who built this country, I'm talking about in America, who built this country had their rights, I guarantee you, everybody else's rights will be honored. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Gigi. Stanton. Wait, Cindy, do you have a clarifying question? No? Okay. Stanton.
I was going to say what's harmful to children is the war in Ukraine, is school shootings, childhood poverty. That's what's harmful for children. Going to a direction not going to harm a child. To them, I'm sure it's no different than watching a cartoon. This is caricature. It is frivolity. It is, just a form of entertainment. And if a little kid is going to be harmed by that, I would like to see some psychological study that demonstrates the harm caused to a child by attending a drag show. I guess it would be the same harm that they might have experienced watching The Wizard of Oz or something that was also a fantasy and an entertainment vehicle. So this BS line of, these are harmful to children and you don't want to expose children. It has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with sexuality. It is entertainment. And there are things that are probably inappropriate for children if it turns into something more than just an entertaining vehicle. If it does turn into something sexual, yeah, I agree. Then not an appropriate venue for children, but it wouldn't be appropriate if it was straight people having the same kind of demonstration. So I think this is just a specious argument that people like to make because it's to protect the children. Well, let's do some other things that protect them that are actually literally endangering their lives.
Thank you. Couldn't agree more. Phyllis.
Yeah, several things. I hope everyone has seen the Jon Stewart interview or destruction of some lawmaker from somewhere who claims, we have a right to have guns and without any registration and all this, but was worried about the drag shows and kids. And Jon Stewart just sliced and diced him intellectually. The guy couldn't keep up. He knew he was caught. The leading cause of death of children in the United States is gun deaths. It's not drag shows. And where, you know, if really the concern is children, how about, you know, laws against parents who take their kids to Hooters? That's so sexualized. Not like any drag show I've ever seen. I mean, drag shows, there's not a lot of skin. They're, you know, they're cinched in. They're not able to like take clothes off. I really appreciated Gabriel Union and Dwayne Wade's speech when they, I think it was NAACP award, or I could be wrong. And you know, the support they're giving to their trans daughter was really beautiful. And Gabriel Union made the point, you don't get to choose which Black people you want to be free. You have to fight for the freedom of all Black people. And this isn't civil rights era. So, you know, the way Martin Luther King handled Bayard Rustin, hopefully, if it were happening today, there would be more openness to letting Bayard Rustin, you know, be who he is publicly if he wanted to. And I just, is my time up?
Do you, well, you only got a couple of seconds. Do you want to get back on?
Yeah, you can put me back on after some people.
Okay. And just as a filler there, that's exactly my point, that you can't choose who to support, and you know, you've got to support everybody. That's exactly the point. It's Cindy.
It's all been covered, everything I wanted to say,
Oh,
but that's okay. I'll
okay,
get
good.
on later.
Okie dokie. Then Phyllis, you're back on.
Well,
Anyone else?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry, I was just seeing if anyone else. But...
Set the timer. I want to go back to, you know, my concern is that we are trickling rapidly into fascism, and there are so many parallels right now to picking out a group of people like the LGBTQIA community and targeting them for laws that restrict their freedom. That is what's happening. To want to make children on puberty blockers and who've done social transition, detransition in a year is going to skyrocket what is already a high suicide rate. They have been allowed for whatever amount of time to live how they feel they are. And also, what is basically the GOP, these people who put these laws forward, are dictating parental rights. They are taking parental rights away from parents to parent their children the way they see fit to affect their good mental and physical health. What's next on that agenda? What parents are going to get targeted next? You know, what are they going to decide next? And I bet there's a lot of people out there who think, well, it'll never be me. It'll never be my family. It'll never be my racial group. It'll never be my church. Oh, yes, it will. 100% it will. So I'll get off now and let somebody else talk.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. And don't worry about that. We need some fillers, so I might be calling on you. Gigi. Oh, and then Bill, I got you. Hold on, sorry, Gigi. All right, yep, Gigi, off you pop.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, there's never been a push to teach true history in the schools. Think about it. Black history is basically missing from the textbooks in terms of all we've contributed. And other groups who are considered minorities in this country, what they've done isn't in those books. I took history of the Civil War, parts 1 and 2 when I was in college. And I kid you not, between those 2 textbooks, they barely had anything about African Americans' contribution to this country, other than our captivity. And even in other history books in high school. So I just find it interesting that there's an expectation to teach about contributions of Black people who were in the LGBTQI community when they aren't even teaching the basic foundation and inception of this country and the people who built it. I mean, I have no expectation, because anytime you're going to rewrite textbooks to fit the losing sides of an insurrection, the South rewrote their textbooks. So it's like the war either never happened or it was so tragic and it made them look like they were the victims. And this is all a part of, this country has been constantly tweaking everything for its own benefit to tell a narrative that it wants to tell, versus what we're missing with all of this is truth. That's it.
Thank you. Stanton, I've got you, and we've got Bill next.
First of all, I want to second everything that Greer said, and second everything that Phil said. Conservatives want states' rights when it's convenient, but not when it's inconvenient. They want parental rights when it's convenient and not when it's inconvenient. As Phyllis said, they want to take away rights for parents to let their children be what they want to be. And that's this fascist state. And we're slipping into it. And people like Florida governor is targeting a lot of groups. We get the magazine called This Week, and they had a cover. This week cover was Ron DeSantis with a billy club, and it had a Black teacher with tape over her mouth, Mickey Mouse with a tape over his mouth, and a white press guy with tape over his mouth. And that's what they're trying to do, is targeting the groups. The net of oppression will continue to expand unless we stop it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Stanton.
Yeah, I went to the Los Angeles public school system most of my life, and I went to high school in Los Angeles, where in 1971, my 11th grade year, they offered for the first time a course in African American history. And I took the class, and it was John Hope Franklin's From Slavery to Freedom was our textbook. And that was an eye-opener for me, and I think it really did change my whole worldview and made me realize that, you know, as child of Holocaust survivors, obviously not the only oppressed peoples in the world. And it just, again, it was mind exploding in many ways. I don't know if that course is even in existence today in the public school systems in Los Angeles. It certainly wouldn't be taught in Florida. And it's frightening to me how we have, as a society, moved away from wanting to teach the truth and expose children to the realities of life. You don't have to be anti-American to want to understand American history or world history for that matter. You just have to be a person who is open to understanding the world. And the other thing I wanted to quickly say is that, you know, again, back to children and exposing them to things like drag shows, I am of the personal opinion that many families who expose their children to certain types of religious upbringing that is off mainstream, I will say, or very peculiar in many ways. I don't want to name particular denominations or particular sects, but to me, that's also, I would call that child abuse, and I would call that child brainwashing and indoctrination. So everybody, has their own point of view about how parents should raise their children. But what the government shouldn't do is get involved with how parents raise their children unless it is physical harm or things that are clearly psychological.
Yep. Great point. Thank you, Stanton. Phyllis.
Yeah, I just wanted to address what was brought up about the word queer. There was a part of my life where it was what Bill was saying, like it wasn't a word that you used unless, it was used as a term of slander or insult to somebody. But I think that the younger generation have embraced it, and not quite in a way the N-word would be used. I think they're fine with other people saying, like, if somebody says, I'm gender queer, and they would not be opposed to somebody else saying, oh yeah, they said they're gender queer, so I think the word queer is more almost polite to use if that's how somebody identifies. It's not an insult unless you use it as an insult, like those queers, that would be insulting. And there's a whole, the young people, there's a whole gang of them that, out
Gotcha,
there in the
Tracy.
world who use that word to describe themselves in various ways. And it's interesting what Stanton just reminded me of. Like, I just watched this movie, Women Talking, and I don't know if anybody else has seen it yet. If you have, yes, it's very good. It's also really hard. And it's takes place in it's based on a story of a real situation that happened in a Mennonite colony in Bolivia. But I think it might be set like in Canada, because the author of the book is from Canada and grew up Mennonite. So anyway, I'm not going to go into detail about it, but the point of it is that, for me, that when women and children are subjected to any kind of patriarchal system, they're going to be in danger and they're going to suffer. And the same is true for LGBTQIA people. The patriarchy is threatened by them. And I'll say more later.
Do you want to get back on?
Is anybody else on?
There's Teresa, and then
Bill?
it's open. And Bill. There's Teresa and Bill, and then do you want to get back on?
I'll go after Bill.
Okay. All right, so we got Teresa.
I think it's interesting. It wasn't until today that I realized, thanks to Bill and some of the rest of you, I thought queer was the polite word. Honestly, I was born in 1970, and a lot of the words that I learned then, I dare not say, because now they're considered, like, I would readily call someone queer and talk about queer rights, because that's how I learned it, because I learned the F word. I learned transvestite and faggot and like all of these other words, and I thought queer was the good word. So I have absolutely, as I said it about 10 times now, I thought that was the polite word. I thought that was the word that we were supposed, when you're talking about language. And it's a matter of, maybe now because of social media or whatever, we can all get the updates or something, but it's like, I'm kind of with Bill. I don't know. And even with pronouns, I don't know what we should say. And it's really, I was writing something, a piece about genetics, and it's really challenging not to talk about XY chromosomes being the sex chromosomes and to write it in a non-binary way. That's how I learned it. I have a degree in biology. And so even to research what biologically could I say, if somebody is XXXY, or just an XXY, or there's not just, but just even writing something where I'm trying to be neutral, I'm trying to be inclusive. You learn language, and then you maybe not even know that you're being offensive, or that the only way you see something is binary because, hey, every book that you read wrote it this way. So it is really interesting, and it's just like, how do you get a different perspective?
Thank you. Stanton, I got you down, and Bill, you're next.
People, I talk about parental rights. It reminds me of something. Parents react to their children in different ways. I unfortunately had two sets of parents. My biological parents were very accepting, liberal, anti-racist, but I had an aunt and uncle who I spent a lot of time with, and I was raised, they were my care from 6 months to a year and a half, but I don't remember that part, but I spent a lot of time with them. They were racist, bigoted. They were interested in the impression I made on their friends. They would never have accepted what I wanted to do like my parents did. My parents wanted me to realize my own dreams. And that's something to consider when you're talking about parental rights. Whether parents want the children to realize their dreams, the parents' dreams in construction and reality, or whether the children do. I'm thankful I had my own parents because I was raised by this aunt and uncle. I've been fighting them the whole time because of their racism and their bigotry. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Phyllis.
Well, I just hope that everybody who got to watch this video learned something. I definitely did. I'd never heard of William Dorsey Swan before. I thought that was really interesting. Professor Joseph wrote a book about him that might be interesting to read. And I also didn't know that in the 1880s, the word homosexual was only used by Germans, which gave me a little chill. And I know some very nice Germans now, so I don't want to disparage all Germans, but you know. And I think the genealogy part of this article, when they mentioned that, it made me think of the drag balls, especially as they were portrayed in Pose, that they created their own families, and there was a house mother or a house father, and they had fabulous names, and they all stuck together and supported each other, honestly, in better ways than some biological families do. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, that just people, first of all, being free to be who they are is just better for society, and finding people to support them and who they can also support. That's why I loved the show Pose. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Phyllis. Stanton.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Teresa was saying earlier. So again, I think it's what Phyllis said. It's all having to do with context. The word gay, I call myself gay, but if someone, I don't know if the kids still use it where they say something like, well, that's so gay. That's not a pleasant thing to say to somebody. If you say that's so gay, it's meant as a derisive, negative context. So it depends on the speaker, and it depends on the context of the use of the words. So, I mean, all words are fine if they're in the right context, or all words are not fine if they're in the wrong context. And one other thing I just was thinking about earlier this morning before we started was, I wonder if any of us in this group would like to live in Iran or Afghanistan, where there was a morality police walking around on the streets with sticks, whipping people, making people pull their chador down further over their face, or hitting people who were dressed in the opposite gender, or going to drag shows and busting them up. Is that the kind of society that any of us would really want to live in? So, I mean, anytime these people propose this legislation, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to creating a policing authority that enforces those concepts and those laws. And yeah, we're headed down some kind of theocratic, autocratic society that I do not want to see happen.
Yeah, thank you, Stanton. Absolutely. As the list is open, I'm just going to mention about how people say that the drag shows are harmful to kids. In my opinion, some of the videos that they watch, like, you know, world's funniest videos or whatever, where they're just watching people getting harmed and hurt and ridiculed and made fun of, that to me is sickening. And I did not ever introduce my child to that kind of behavior, because I think that is disgusting and horrible and is very bad morally. And also video games, of course, with violence. I mean, I work in an elementary school. I know kids are oblivious to some horrific things that some visuals that they have. They're just, you know, so that I think is way more harmful. So it's just ridiculous. And also, it's up to the parents. The kids are not just getting out of, you know, climbing through their window and going to these drag shows. They're taken by their parents. So it's the parents' choice, as you've said before, people have said, you know, it's their choice if they want to introduce them to that. You know, that's their child. Thank you, Phyllis. I will put you on the list. You are next.
Yeah, you just reminded me, I watched a video yesterday of this white mom took her two little white daughters to, like, it looked like it was a drag brunch, and she was sarcastically narrating, like, after the fact, oh, the trauma, like she's like taking them to see what kind of trauma they'll experience. But she was being really sarcastic. And these drag queens brought these little girls up and put glitter on them and taught them a dance to Baby Shark, which I thankfully don't have to ever listen to. And it was so, I'm like, this is like a little girl's dream, to have somebody who's sparkly and shiny make you sparkly and shiny too. I should say a cis little girl, maybe not a not cis little girl.
Right.
So I just thought that was lovely, and I wish it was something I could have experienced when I was little. I think I would have loved it. And it's really no different than the Disney princesses and the Disney women villains that roam around Disney World in costumes that are over the top. I mean, I don't get the pearl clutching. I really don't.
Got you, Teresa. Thank you very much. And Bill, you're up.
I'm gonna pick up on something Stanton said. About the morality police. It was a very powerful movie in the 1980s, The Kiss of the Spider Woman. It was set in Brazil during a military dictatorship, and gays were illegal, like Iran, he was talking about. And it shows the interplay between a leftist revolutionary and an effeminate homosexual played by William Hurt, and leftist revolutionary was Raul Julia. And it's extremely powerful, shows what it's like to live in a state like Iran is now, with morality police. It just reminded me of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Stanton. And I got you, Marion.
Yeah, I also wonder how psychologically damaging it is to children when they're driving in the car with their parents and they see homeless people begging at every intersection. Or if you live in an urban area and you walk down the sidewalk and have to step over people who are sleeping on the sidewalk, or seeing people who are in homeless encampments under freeway overpasses. I think all that is psychologically damaging to young children, and I'm sure it's confusing and upsetting to them. They may not express it, but it has to have an impact on them. It has an impact on me. And
Mhm.
I don't see anybody trying to do anything to solve that problem specifically. But we can ban drag shows. That we can do. So it's all what we choose to clean up, so to speak, and what we choose to not do anything about and ignore.
Thank you. Teresa.
Yeah, I was wondering how much of this has to do with the 2024 presidential election. And what got me thinking, I mean, definitely DeSantis, in battle with Trump, with all the laws, it's almost like, okay, if I want to show how tough I am, I'm going to take a marginalized group and show how I can make their lives miserable as hell. It reminds me of the war on drugs, where it just incarcerated a lot of Black people, stop and frisk a lot of Black people, it's just like, okay. Well, so now we're not picking on the Blacks as much, but we're still on the top 3. So now we're going to go after trans. Now we're going to go after drag shows. Now we're going to go after whatever. And then my personal favorite of du jour, I'm writing my blog about Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert. My entire blog is asking him racist questions about his racist suggestion that white people should live separately from Black people. And as I told you guys before, I play racist bingo. So I was like, I'm waiting for that blankety blank to announce he's running for some political office, because why at this point in his career, and I think nearly every newspaper has dropped him. So my prediction is he's running for some type of politics, because maybe he wants to be the VP or whatever. I have no idea. But one nice ray of hope that I've seen so far that broke this week were women, and I will call them rich women, because they were able to fly out of Texas to get their abortion care. And all of the, I think it's 5 women in Texas, and they all wanted their unborn children. They had planned, something went sideways. They needed a medical abortion and they could not get it in Texas. And of course, AG Paxton, who should have, I'm going to say it. If he were not white, he'd be in prison already. If I can finish my thought.
Yes.
But he came out with some just disingenuous thing about how Texas supports women. And it's like, no, you're forcing women who have unviable pregnancies to basically be on the edge of death. Now, not these 5 women, because again, they could fly out of Texas. But for women who do not have those resources, they basically have to be on their deathbed before doctors will then induce an abortion.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I know it's a frightening world we're living in right now, isn't it? Marion.
I wanted to say that 3 or 4 thoughts running through my head. One was a positive note. It wasn't until Bayard Rustin passed away that President Obama gave him the Medal of Freedom posthumously. And I wrote some notes here. Oh, it was about someone making a comment, maybe it was Teresa, about the women in Iran and Afghanistan and wearing these hijabs. I know medical science is working on a project as we speak about being able to impregnate men. I said, and I had these conversations with my granddaughter. I said, all these restrictions on these women in these Middle Eastern countries, these men want these women want these men want these sons, and they, if the women give birth to daughters, the daughters are mistreated. And I know that for a fact because I had Middle Eastern students, and the father left his handprint on one of my little girl students' face. They were from Jerusalem. And I actually spoke to the man about it, and he went to the principal and complained about me. And when he came for a parent teacher conference, he wouldn't let his wife say anything. And I thought I was going to have to stand and defend myself physically because this man came to this country and yet he's going to challenge the views of women. Why in the name of heaven? You know that right now only women can have babies. These fools realize the man determines the gender of the baby. Yet when the women have the girl children, they mistreat the girl children because they want 10 sons. And I said, if you jackasses know a little bit of biology, you know you're the ones that determine the gender of the baby, not the woman. So it's just so, it enrages me. The women walking around in these hot clothes, but you want 10 sons, and then you abuse the poor women. It's a scary time, it's a terrifying time, and I'm mad as hell. I'll end on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill, and then Gigi. Is there anyone else? Excuse me. Okay, go ahead, Bill.
I like what Marion said. It reminded me of a quote from Betty White, who's the font of wisdom. Betty White said, if men needed abortion, they could get them at Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom to that.
Sorry, was that the only comment you wanted to make?
It's reminded me of Betty.
Okay. Gigi.
I was thinking about what Stanton said and about the oppression in Iran, but I'm thinking about it in America and how they oppressed enslaved people for over 467 years and are still oppressing them till this day. The people who are changing the laws are the ones who will be least affected. And they have a history of doing atrocities. This segment of the population who's always used laws in order to slowly change things. My thing is, when will America and its citizens wake up and see? Eventually, we all will be affected. And like someone said, they're going to test it out on the lowest hanging fruit. But history has already shown that things have been done to the lowest hanging fruit. Believe me, I can't wait for people who standing by on the side of the roads to save me. I got to save myself. Because help either doesn't come or it comes too late. We have the history of in the inception of this country that has shown us constant atrocity against the least of us. And nothing is being done about it. So believe me, everything that's coming in the future, y'all need to be prepared.
Sorry. Thank you, Gigi. I do have to say, you say African Americans are the lowest hanging fruit. I do believe the indigenous peoples are on that same branch. You know, they're hanging there too, because this is it almost to the point of invisibility. So I just want to add that. And is there anyone else that wants to get on the list? I have something else to say, but I will save it till my wrap up. But if anyone want to say anything now? No? Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that I am a volunteer at Co-op Radio. You probably know that. And I do some interviews. And I recently just interviewed a drag queen. Her name was Eileen Dover, which I thought was rather funny. Anywho, she was a very interesting person, and we discussed a lot of stuff. And one of the questions that I asked was, how do you feel about having children come to the shows? and do you tone it down? And I've been to her shows. Her language is not toned down that much, I have to admit. But then again, that's the choice. And she said that's the choice of the parents. If they want to bring them along, that's their choice. They know what they're getting into. And so, yeah, that's very interesting. If you've never been to a drag show, I do recommend you going. Phyllis. You're muted.
Sorry. There's a Daily Show podcast, and I found one that had, it was Roy Wood Jr. was interviewing first Bob the drag queen, who's a Black drag queen, and then he interviewed Professor Joseph, the speaker in the TED Talk that we watched. And if it's the Forgotten Queer History of Drag is what it's called, featuring Bob the drag queen, Beyond the Scenes, the Daily Show. It's on YouTube. But Bob,
can you put that in the chat, please?
Oh gosh, yeah.
When you're done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bob the drag queen does his drag shows are not so much singing and dancing as stand-up comedy, and he said he doesn't allow children aren't allowed to attend his shows. That's you know, and a lot of time it depends on where they're being held. If it's a brunch, I imagine there might be a tone that's more family friendly. And then if it's an evening, I imagine it would probably be a little bit more adult appropriate for and drag shows in general. So, you know, I think that it's always important. I know people who won't take their kids to a movie without researching it themselves. So I'm sure people research before they take their kids to a drag show. I'm not opposed to doing that, and I will try to put that in the chat real quick.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we're gonna now get into the wrap up, which means people who haven't said anything will be able to speak for 2 minutes, and then the rest of us will speak for 1 minute. Cindy, you did raise your hand, but you never spoke. So I'm going to put you down on the never spoken. And I can't hear you because you're muted. But Cindy, do you want to speak? Are you saying no?
I did speak in the beginning.
Did you?
So yeah, way back in the beginning, like the second person.
Oh, I must have not been good at writing your name down. Okay.
Not a big deal. I
Marva.
think this is, give me 1 minute. I think this has been very interesting. I think I know I have a lot of reading I want to do to find out more in a bunch of these topics. So thank you.
Thank you. Marva, do you want to say anything?
Yes, I've enjoyed this discussion. I want to thank you for bringing this article. I've watched the videos and the most informative. Would like to share my childhood experience, and but I have difficult speaking this morning, and I'm not going to hold you up in the group up. And
Marva, if you have something to say, we've got time. It's okay.
yeah, I was growing up at next door to young man that would play dolls and paper dolls with me, and his mom and grandma was really practicing Catholic. He would rather play with girls than boys. And his mother and grandmother would report in to his daddy. And he was who he would come and beat him unmerciful.
Oh, no.
And his screams and things, things that I would never forget. And as I grew older, they called him a sissy. And he was the most gentle, kind-hearted teenager I grew up around. And and I can never forgive his grandma and mom for trying to beat that out of him.
Right.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's a very touching and sad story. Thank you for sharing. And I wonder where he is now, huh?
He's deceased now.
Oh, okay. So Amal, you're the last person who hasn't said anything. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'll say something. Yeah, interesting video. Some of the history I was unaware of. I am not an ally of the LGBTQ community, and I don't want to come off as if I am. I don't agree with it, and I don't like the fact that they always using African American history to parallel what they say is their struggle. My struggle is not yours. Yours is not mine. We're not allies. Be very clear about that. And so the things that he outlined in the video, if you just wanted to talk about queer issues, LGBTQ community issues, that's fine. But don't use the history and the struggle of my people to parallel that. I'm fine with you just talking about it if that's the issue that you want to discuss, but you can leave the history of my people out of it. As far as someone mentioned Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union's speech about Dwayne Wade's son, what Gabrielle Union said in terms of being able to pick and choose, yes, I can pick and choose what struggle what Black people or what struggle I choose to align myself with. I have to choose what you want me to choose. Dwayne Wade's son, a lot of people don't talk about. His mother is not aligned with that, but nobody wants to hear her voice. They only talk about Gabrielle Union, who's his stepmother. That's not his mother, and what she has to say about the way he's choosing to live. That's a 15-year-old boy. And his father has allowed him to transition into something that he is not and will never be. So that and someone brought up Iran and the atrocities that go on in Iran as if America is any better. No, I wouldn't rather live in Iran, but I mean, I'm here. I wouldn't rather live here either. As a Black man in the United States, and the atrocities that my people experienced here. So no, I wouldn't rather live there, but I mean, I wouldn't rather live here either. Was that my time? I'm sorry if I'm
Yes, that was your time, baby.
Okay.
Hey, I do have a clarifying question if I can. So
Sure.
you're saying that gay Black people are not part of your people?
No, I didn't say Black people weren't a part of my people. I said that don't use the history of my people to parallel the history of the LGBT community as if we're struggling on the same line, because we're not.
So you don't, oh, okay, so you don't think you're struggling on the same line?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Amal. So the rest of us have, or the rest of y'all have 1 minute, and I'm going to start with Stanton.
Yeah, I think people just need to leave other people the F alone and mind their own business. And I'm going to say something that Amal said several weeks ago about he doesn't need to live next door to white people. That's fine. I don't need allies. I just need people to leave me alone and let me live my life. So if your struggle isn't my struggle, that's fine. I understand it. But I just don't need people putting roadblocks and impediments in my life. That's all.
And I can respect that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stanton. Marion.
Thank you, Louise, for this very necessary conversation. You all have heard me say this about a gazillion times before. A human being is a human being, not part giraffe and part human, or part kangaroo and part human. A human being is a human being. And you can't beat anything out of anybody, because that happened to one of my poor little students. I remembered him in first grade as a girl, and when he got to me, he was a boy. And the grandfather came to tell me the mother was beating the child for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because the poor little thing was caught. He didn't know whether he was a girl or a boy because of dual sex organs. So as I said, I remembered him when he was a little girl, and when he got to me, he was a boy. I saw that young man grown up when I was riding the St. Charles streetcar one afternoon, and I said a silent prayer. I said, thank God. He was working on the streetcar tracks with the work crew. So he made it to adulthood, because we didn't have a social worker at the school at the time. And so the child's house to see, I was going to try and talk to his mother. And when I told my mother about it, she said, it's a wonder you didn't get your throat, your tongue choked out of your mouth, because I was very concerned that that woman was going to kill that child, because this was something he didn't have any control over. But he was a grown man, and I was so happy to see him working on the streetcar tracks. He seemed to be about 25 or 30 years old at the time.
Thank you, Marion. Phyllis.
Well, I just hope that people will continue to learn, because I'm always learning. You know, I just listened to a interview with Masha Gessen yesterday, who was originally from Russia and considers themselves trans, and hearing about their whole process and the different transitions they've made in their life was new to me. I've heard other interviews with them, and I'm using them because I don't know what the pronoun preference is for Masha Gessen. But you know, I look for things that teach me things that I don't know. So to say I don't understand something, why the hell not? We've got Google, we've got libraries, we can go to YouTube and learn how to fix anything. So there's no excuse for not understanding or knowing. And I just hope that we will be reminded of the conversation we had a couple weeks ago about intersectionality. And somebody like Professor Joseph cannot separate the oppression they experience, because those two identities in themselves are entwined. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. Teresa.
I just like to say I love when I'm hearing about history that's not in the lens of the history I learned when I was in school. As a matter of fact, I remember in high school, the newspaper came out with an article about a racist US history book, and that's the one I was being taught out of. So it's really good to hear other facets of American history. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Gigi.
Well, I'm gonna say this. The 5 civilized tribes, what they did was they stood alongside those who oppressed them and oppressed my people. And when they protested, African Americans stood by their side. And then, moreover, they purged African Americans and their descendants off of their Indian robes. When I say African Americans are the lowest hanging fruit in this country, that's exactly what I mean. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Bill, you're the last.
I just want to echo something that Amal said. I disagree with him on the LGBTQ issues, but I certainly agree with him. It's easier to look to other countries as oppression, like Iran, but the oppression is going on in our country. Some more blatant, like the state of Florida, but some less blatant, like every state, all 50 states. So we need to look at what's going on in our country, and we see something like Iran, and we say that's horrible, but it's happening here too. Thank you. Thanks for the video.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So I guess that was an interesting conversation. I'm glad that we've had it, but I just want to add a little bit. Like, I was raised with a father, apart from being abusive, he was a homophobe, sexist, racist. Yes, he was racist, even though he was Egyptian. And he would say things like, when we're watching TV, watching a movie, it's like, oh, that guy is a homosexual. You can tell. And it's just like, what do you know, I was raised with this. Every day there was this BS that would come out of his mouth. Where am I going with that? Well, I don't know where I'm going with that. But the point is, I think it's really good to learn, and I'm learning all the time. A friend of mine, an old friend from back in London, went through becoming a woman. He was born male and is now female. And so I'm quite privy to all that goes involved with all of that. And it's a lot. And it was difficult for me at first. It was like, wait, what do you want to be called? Wait, why? What's that? You know, I didn't know. And I'm learning a lot. And I still continue to learn. If it makes them feel happy, it's no skin off my nose. It's a word. If it makes them feel good and it makes them feel seen, for sure. Why not do it? I'm not going to dig my heels in and say, that's not right. It's not correct. No, be open-minded. It doesn't matter. And as Marion said, we're all, you know, flesh and blood. We're all people, you know. I think to get angry and upset about what people choose or what people are born as is a real waste of effort. And I don't know. I guess I'm getting to be sounding like a hippie. Why can't we all just get along, man? So thank you for listening. And I guess that's it.